Hello, it's Brad Laurie or BlockchainBrad, and today, once again, I'm honoured to speak with Sascha Ragtschaa. He is the CEO of OWN Network. Sash, thank you very much, mate, for being here.
Thanks, Brad. Always a pleasure talking to you.
Likewise, mate. Now, for those who don't know, OWN Network is really, truly all about a new digital investment platform. We're going to dig deep in this update to find out more of what Sash and his team have been doing. But let's start, Sash, with that mentioning of the slogan, because obviously that's really important. That's what drives the whole system that you represent as the CEO. Now, you're powered by blockchain. That's less important now that you've really moved into the doing. You're looking at the pragmatics and what that engine can do. So investment platform, that's the big part. Do you want to give us a rundown on what it means specifically to represent investments for the future?
Yeah, absolutely, Brad. Our vision's always been to improve the fundraising and the funding cycle for SMEs, for small to medium enterprises. That was the ultimate vision when we started 2 years ago, because again, we saw an opportunity or a need for SMEs around the world. You have, so many private businesses, and they all have funding needs. They all have investor and shareholder needs, yet they're massively underserviced. There are no standard platforms. There's no standard technology. They have to go to the bank, VC, private equity, and all that. And we felt there needs to be a change for the businesses and the issuers ultimately. At the same time, we're seeing a lot of trends around kind of neo brokers, and we saw them. So neo brokers are the ones like, Robinhood or the guys in the Netherlands and all that. And they make investment really fun and interesting. So you can invest in the stock market and you can invest in really, really big companies, but they do it in a fun way. What we try to do is, or what we're trying to do is combining the two. So we're focusing on servicing for the issuer, making it simpler, more efficient, and cheaper for them to basically raise money and get funding and get shareholders. And at the same time, we want to also reduce the friction for the investors getting onto these platforms. And that's all what OWN is all about.
Got it. So really, as you said, it's all kinds of investors as well. And we're going to dig into that with regard to retail investors, specific enterprise and business investors too. You really do cater for the whole gamut, the whole suite of investors for this platform. Now, when it comes to the securitized element, when it comes to tokenized elements, that's where the blockchain really does bring value. So my apologies for suggesting at any point that the blockchain isn't relevant. It really is, but it's the engine that sits underneath. And we want to explore more the surface of this now, the emerging business that you're doing. So with regard to the slogans, I really did want to talk to you about these because these are quite new. One of them comes up on your new website. It says, "Life's too short for bad investments." So they've made the team have come up with ideas like backing the hottest companies on their own platform. Another statement was make money for life, equity without the entry barriers. So these things are really coming forward now as mantras, as slogans for you as a company. So do you want to talk to us about those concepts, essentially, with regard to why you have such confidence in these statements to say that you can really enfranchise, really change the game when it comes to investment?
Yeah, I mean, what we know from the past is when we managed publicly listed companies and large businesses and IPOs and these sort of things is that most of the investments are for, a very old demographic. Yeah. So if you look at the stock market and who participates in the stock market, it's very old. It's usually white males, predominantly American, investing in the stock market. Mm-hmm. And then you have the crypto space, right? And the crypto space is really young and energetic, but it lacks kind of the regulation and the compliance and a lot of protection for investors. So when you combine the two, you look at where would young people, millennials, invest in? They would back probably the coffee shop next door. They would back, a startup or a really, really kind of cool brand that isn't necessarily on the stock market. And so we thought, how can someone young that wants to invest get into private businesses that are not yet on the stock market, startups, or just companies they see every day here and there. And that's why we created OWN. And those slogans should reflect that you can basically support your local business. You can support a business that is sustainable, that fits what you're doing and where you like the management team and all that. And they might not be as big as, to be able to be listed on the stock market, but they equally have funding needs, and they're equally quite big in some cases.
Right. And
So
Sash, in that respect, just if I can jump in, I remember speaking to you last time, and the market share for the SMEs as well is substantial when we talk about its value and the kind of potential that this alliance could be for OWN as well, because there's an immense amount of money within that SME sort of business frame.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, 99% of the businesses globally are private business. I've mentioned that a few times, and they have funding needs and they have shareholder investment needs, but they have no single platform. And our aim is to be that single platform, and that's what we're doing in Europe. Unfortunately, you have to say at the moment, regulation and compliance and to onboard these businesses is quite costly. It takes time, and we're pushing the boundaries in terms of improving that and making it quicker and simpler and cheaper for businesses. And once our businesses are live and they're basically listed, we want investors to have a really, really good gamified, fun experience to invest, but equally have the protection so that they understand it's a regulated vehicle, it's compliant, they are protected, and the business is actually doing what they're saying, which is really, really important, and which doesn't exist with IEOs and ICOs.
Right, exactly. And obviously, and we've talked about this before, you're such a proponent and stickler for regulation right from the outset with your own platform and for those businesses that work with you. The due diligence process is rigorous. Now, with regard to the reasons why someone, may want to use the platform, one of the things that OWN Network stand by with regard to breaking the reasoning down, there's 6 that you have, things like access, it's personalized, and we'll talk about why. Affordable, you have cool tools, equity and perks. So obviously there's a lot, and if people want to know more, they can certainly go and look at these individually. But how would you sum up these points in terms of the reasoning for why this platform, as OWN says, rocks, or is so relevant and is so innovative?
Well, why is it personable? Because, when businesses come to us and they want to do an STO and they want to do an issuance with us, we assign a dedicated personal project manager to them, a real human they can talk to. As you know, Brad, there are a lot of kind of platforms, and they claim, we've got the technology solution. You can do tokenization and all that. Tokenization is the simplest form. You can do that on a spreadsheet. You can basically just set up a few tokens. You can do it on a spreadsheet and all that. The tech is actually, I don't want to downplay it, but it's something you need, but it's not the differentiator. And for us, the differentiator is we actually personally engage with these businesses. We talk to them, we handhold them, we explain to them what they need in terms of regulatory approvals. We explain to them how you create a prospectus, what sort of marketing, advisory functions you need. And we handhold them from start to end through the process. And we had to do it because there was simply no service and no company that would do this. Because we've initially focused on the tech alone, but we've seen that really is a differentiator compared to other platforms, that we actually speak to these businesses. And equally, we want to apply a light touch for the investors. So once our issuances and offers are live, we want really that kind of personal engagement and communication. So the team has done most of that in the last few months, and it's a lot of work because you have to speak to everyone. But I think we feel it's worth it because that only gives us the assurances that those are good businesses, sound businesses, and we can also add value to them.
Right. Well, in the future, though, with regard to this, Sascha, is that how do you scale, though? Obviously you take that so seriously and you want to make sure the due diligence is there. But how do you make sure that also that you can cope with, the real interest as you start to build into the rest of the year and beyond? There's going to be a lot more companies, no doubt, that want to utilize your platform. How will you cope with doing this kind of rigorous analysis and this rigorous support, as you said, to personalize?
Yeah, we want to automate as much as possible. So at the moment, because the STO space is so young and so fresh and so new, there are no real standard products. So how do you do an equity STO? How do you do a hybrid STO with a utility token or something like that? So the clients we're working through, they're having to explore a lot of that with us for the first time. but we're seeing standards and we're seeing patterns. So over the next 6 to 12 months, we're productizing, standardizing a lot of these things, so we can reduce the incorporation costs, we can reduce the regulatory costs, we can reduce the legal costs. It's all about automating these things, but at a minimum, we need to make sure that we have these kind of standard processes and standard products people can choose from. And because it's so new, as I mentioned before, we're still working through that. But hopefully till the end of the year, we will have 2 or 3 box standard products that are priced the same, that people can pick up. And most of it can be done self-service online. That's our immediate focus.
And what's interesting too with your new website, and if those, for those who haven't looked at it, it is a new website that the OWN Network have designed. It's very user-friendly and it's very much product-driven and service-driven. You have really clear icons there as well, Sascha, with regard to, for those who are looking at investment, for those who are looking at raising capital. You want to talk us through why you made this switch into that pragmatic sort of access to the platform visually through that interface, because it really is like that. It really is clear that there are different parts that I can access when I look at this site, and I have those choices, you know, right there if I wanted to run my own business, for example, through your network.
Yeah, I mean, it's constant iterations, and we ask ourselves every week, how can we simplify our messages? How can we explain to people what we do in a simple form? I mean, with crypto and the blockchain community, you're coming from a very, very sophisticated technology-centric kind of community, but we're pitching towards small to medium businesses that might even struggle with a website. So these sort of people, you need to explain, what are you doing? You know, we're helping you with your fundraising. At the same time, we also want to cater towards investors, and we know that the millennials and the younger generation, you know, their attention span is much, much quicker. They want speedy information, speedy things. So we have to constantly reiterate and change. I mean, even our fast platform and some of our services are already looking a little bit dated, even though they've only been developed a few months ago.
That's funny, because it's called fast.
Yeah. So we're constantly reiterating and really challenging ourselves. Could we do this simpler? Could we reduce steps? Could we really make this quicker and more efficient? And that's an everyday cycle and process.
Right. Okay. So really, you've geared it for the needs of the, like you said, for the current times. Now, breaking it down to those 2 sectors, business and investor, that's one thing I wanted to better understand with regard to benefits as well. Firstly, let's start with business. And for those who are literally trying to utilize your platform to better their business, things like launching new fundraising, providing that full stack of service from the issuance all the way through to the investor management, instant liquidity, building in a CRM tool system as well. So there's a lot of reasons why you would want a business perhaps want to, you know, move into your model. Do you want to talk to us a bit more about, you know, your view on the benefits for business to integrate?
Yeah, well, the benefits are simple. First of all, it's cheaper, which is a big benefit for business. You get access to a whole new demographic, which is a big sell. We have a lot of businesses. They are mature businesses. They have aging shareholders. They have aging investors, and they want to appear fresh, or they want to do something different. They need to move into digital. They understand that the online world is the future where they can sell their services. I'm talking about kind of medium-sized businesses that are, you know, they're specialists, they're really powerhouses globally, but they're quite unknown with kind of the younger generation. And they have a need to really improve that. And we're giving them the tools and the procedures to really appear much more digital savvy, but also to be more quicker, more flexible and all that. And fundraising and shareholder management is a complicated process. It's very, very manual at the moment. It's very, very regulatory and compliance heavy. There's hefty regulatory and compliance costs. If you do an IPO and you go to the stock market, it's crazy. And our view is that it shouldn't be. You know, it can be about investor protection. It can be about issuer protection and issuer focus, but it should also be much cheaper. And, you know, an investor in Asia should be able to invest in Europe without any borders, without getting a bank account or brokerage account. It should be just like, you know, in the crypto space where you can get a token here and there. That should be
Exactly.
the speed. That's what we're aiming at, but within a regulated, compliant environment. Yeah.
Right, and you make a good point of that, and you always, as we've said before, you've always maintained that respect for regulatory, for rules, for compliance measures globally, regardless of jurisdiction. Now, investors, let's flip this on its head for a moment. Now, if someone wants to participate, let's say, but they don't have a business of their own, you cater for them through your model, through the blockchain, and you allow for instant connections, as you said. Flexible share options is another thing. And then you have a really user-friendly dashboard. So if I'm someone, for example, who wants to engage at that level, what's the benefit for me in this respect, Sascha? Why optimize the blockchain and use this system to take part in perhaps a share in a business?
Well, you can invest in a business, that would have maybe done an IPO but didn't want to, and you as a retail investor, you're actually able to invest. I mean, if you participate in a large-scale IPO, you have the institutional investors that get basically the first, right of refusal to participate, and then you have an oversubscribed retail base, and usually people lose out. So, if you do an Uber, I see, if you looked at the Uber IPO or Lyft or Spotify or whatever, the average retail investor cannot participate. So we're trying to improve that, obviously on a smaller scale with private businesses, but we want local businesses that you can touch and feel, and retail investors that might be able to relate to them more than the General Motors or the IBMs or whatever, and have a chance to invest because they like the management team, they like the founders, they believe in the story, and they agree, yeah, it's a startup, there's a risk, but I really want to support them with a few $100s. And
Right.
That's our vision. Yeah.
And really, you're just opening up the narrative. You're giving more people more access, quite sincerely, Sascha, because of this platform. And essentially, you're changing the current scenario where it's predominantly white collar, as you said, and we're really allowing for those millennials to have a voice when it comes to decision making for their own investments and their own future. Yeah. Now, there are obviously other platforms as well that exist of like design where people can obviously access their system. There may be a registrar, I don't know. But to your knowledge, are there any blockchain based systems like yours? And if so, what sets you apart from any other like system that may exist now?
There are good companies that do what we do. And again, the space is huge. I know, crypto has this tribalism approach where, my tech is better than yours, and that's why you're crap, and this kind of stuff, which we don't really sign up to. But what sets us apart is the experience. So we have managed hundreds of thousands of companies in the past. We understand the whole servicing side. We own our own technology, funnily enough, with our name. So, we've built our own blockchain, which is specifically geared towards securities and speed. We have the whole application stack, which we own, and we have that network to basically make it happen. And, we're learning by helping these businesses to fundraise. We have really good partners that can help throughout the process, incorporation, legal, tax, and regulatory. We have the regulatory contacts and engagements. So we can help businesses with the end-to-end process.
And honestly as well, Sascha, it's very clear that you're understating that all those different points, because they are perhaps arguments for what does set you apart. Just the degree of experience you have with your team, the kind of contacts you've had pre-blockchain, you've really brought into this as well. And certainly just the ability to transform your platform by having your own blockchain, that's a big deal. Very few have that, and they usually lend the technology from other sources, the other blockchain infrastructures. You've done everything from scratch, and that makes you quite unique in that respect as well. Now, with regard to verticals and sectors, you're quite agnostic. You're quite open to almost every. There's a few that are red flagged, but that's outlined on your website. But for the most part, you are open to business really for anyone. But specifically, you're focused on the SME, that small business sector as well. Are there any current verticals you really want to mention that you're really focused on because they seem to be the starting point and they're driving a lot of interest?
One big focus for us is sustainable companies. So that there's a big focus. So companies that try to do the right thing, that focus in renewable energies, that focus on, climate improvements or the climate change issue. Mm-hmm. So we're really focused on helping to onboard these sort of companies and businesses, because again, they need a platform. They're in the public eye, and they are not, the biggest polluters are all publicly listed companies, right?
Right.
And private companies. Well, I'm not saying private companies are better, but there are a lot of great green, sustainable businesses that we just simply want to help. So that's one area, because that feels these companies will make a difference, and we should support them. People should invest in them, and they'll do good. The others are just general startups that have maybe a new tech approach, or they have a new approach to process improvements. So there's a lot of companies like that. And again, those are heavy vetting processes. I think 99% of those businesses fall through the cracks, and we wouldn't onboard them. Mm-hmm. And then funnily enough, what really excites me are the really kind of boring, I'm saying boring in, kind of like brackets.
Right.
Boring, but they're kind of global heavyweights. They're global players. And we have a few of these companies we're talking to. So they're market leader in their domain, but they do like coatings, or they do like special framework designs, or like wood crafting or something, but they're like the best of the best. And I always get really excited when I talk to them, because wow, you just don't know they exist. But they're really, really good. They're specialized. They're really successful, but they're not in the public eye. So they really excite me. Yeah.
And you've always been like that too, with regard to quality. You don't necessarily want the quantity of projects or of startups, but you want that quality to be really representative of your own ethos. So are there any other partnerships perhaps, or any other SMEs that really stand out? You're alluding to some of these specialized SMEs, but by name, are there any that you can mention just as some examples of the kinds of companies that really have been attracted by the offering that your platform provides?
Yeah, I mean the two guys that we have that we are listing now, I mean VersaView and Project Crowd. Project Crowd is about freelancing, and they're flipping the whole freelance process on its head. They're launching a very, very sophisticated token structure. I can't give any detail about what they're launching, because it's going through the regulatory and legal process, which is annoying because it takes such a long time. And I know our community are kind of restless and impatient in that sense.
Right.
Yeah, it's just once these things have regulatory approval, all the details will be shared. But until then, it's a bit frustrating that we cannot share much. Yeah. So those are innovative companies that we're supporting, that we're helping to onboard at the moment, and we have a number of really, really good businesses in the pipeline, which will also be launching in the next few months. Or again, it depends on the sales process, the onboarding timelines and all that. But of course, I'm not going to mention any names.
No, and I'll dig as much as I can. Yeah. So Sascha, with regard to that though, obviously you're not willing to give any names, and I'll get more out of you. But with regard to the future in terms of interest, I did want to find out more. Are you finding it easy with regard to people coming to your door? Is there a lot of interest from the outside in, or do you have to do a lot of PR? Do you have to, go and outsource interest as a team?
We don't do much PR, to be honest. Just simply, we just don't have the funding mechanisms to do much, because you can waste a lot of money on PRs with kind of strange outcomes. But I think once we've done the first one or two, and we feel the model is working and all that, we will do a lot of kind of advertising and PR just to attract more businesses. At the moment, we're actually quite busy. We have a small sales team, and they're doing demos like 4 or 5 every day. We're getting a lot of interest from businesses, but the vetting takes a long time, and it's not a really scalable model at the moment. So we're having to improve that over time. So yeah, I mean, we are the bottleneck at the moment, and we're trying to hire more people, onboard it, automate as much as possible. Right. But there are a number of bottlenecks that's something we need to fix.
Well, it sounds like it's a good thing though, in one respect, because if you're your own bottleneck, that means that there's a backlog of interest. Yeah. So that's a good problem in one respect to have. But certainly that scalability issue needs to be addressed over time, and no doubt because the hiring, you're working on that. Now, with regard to proof of adoption, that's something that is very difficult for many projects or many startups to really evidence. Is it fair to say, given that you're starting to now, post native CHX token really starting to optimize, and it's really starting to work, post mainnet now, do you feel like you have more of a chance of proof of adoption of your whole ecosystem.
Yeah. Proof of adoption will come effectively once the first businesses are live, they have shareholders, and there's activity in terms of movement of transactions and all that. So over time, the adoption will simply happen. We're not really worried about it. Yes, the adoption is slow simply because onboarding those businesses are a bit slow. But once we do the issuances and investors are able to, go to our platform, we already have a few thousand people signed up on our STO issue investment platform. So that is really good, but they can't do much. They can look at the offers and there's very little detail. So it's a little bit embarrassing. I feel a bit embarrassed about it.
Right.
But it's something we just can't push for more until regulator says this is all good, this is all fine. The legal guys are saying this is all fine, but it will happen over time. We're not. I know the community are very impatient and they push us definitely, but at the same time we're going on our own pace. We're not letting ourselves be dragged around like horses in front of a wagon. We
Right.
feel we do the right speed of adoption, of onboarding, of pace, and yeah, that's what we do. We always do our own thing.
Yes, and you certainly have. Right from the beginning when I've talked to you, you've always made sure you lead as the CEO your own startup, your own company. But obviously the complexities there are that you do have people who have engaged with the support in the utility token, and you do have communities. So it must be difficult in that respect to try and balance the equation, because there is this unusual circumstance where everyone is so keen to find out. So in that respect, with that in mind, let's talk about two things. Firstly, we'll go with regulation and then discuss token. Not something you like to talk about, but we'll go there. So with regulation, recently we've seen the US, for example, come out firing, really shown that they do support regulation. They've made it clear that they're going to be very staunch about it. They've shown that they'll support things like the Reg A. That's been around for a while, the A+, rather. So what does it mean for you though, Sascha, with regard to regulation? We often talk about how you're making sure you're following through with requirements, but are you at that point now where you've jumped through almost all the hoops? Or is it something that continues to be ongoing for you, where you have to just make sure it's another regulation you get through?
It's an ongoing process, and unfortunately, it's not a globalized process. So every region is different. In Liechtenstein, it's very well defined, and we're very lucky to be based in Liechtenstein, and we can work with the regulator. We work with the government. They know us. Some of our partners have helped draft the Blockchain Act, which is really, really good for us, and it makes it easy. But then you have Germany, you have the UK, you have the Netherlands. They are very, very different, but they're fairly harmonized because of European Union. And then you have the US, and the US is very progressive in some cases. But at the same time, their regulation is very, very expensive. And at the moment, we're feeding lawyers, and lawyers are earning an absolute killing. And that can't be the sole purpose of regulation, that you have expensive lawyers that can draft you proper prospectus and terms and conditions.
Right. So in that respect, are they putting themselves at risk in those regions like the US? Does it almost turn you off sometimes because of the exorbitant costs? The lawyers, as you mentioned, do cost so much when, obviously comparatively, the US or Asia, for example, are so pro blockchain. They're so progressive in trying to really advance this technology.
Yeah, they're not very progressive. I mean, in Europe, we're very progressive. I mean, in Asia, it's Singapore that is quite progressive. And then you have other, Southeast Asian countries. Hong Kong, for example, are very much watch and see. But the positive thing is, if one regulator and one environment gets it right, others will eventually follow. The SEC has taken a very hard stance. You have to understand the US has a big, big legacy pool of capital, capital servicing. It's the most sophisticated financial and capital market in the world. And a lot of things have gone wrong in the US. So you can't go to the regulator and say, please change this, reduce this kind of change this law or that law. It's been put down for a reason. And because, people have exploited these loopholes over some time. So I can understand their side, but we're trying to show a different path. We're definitely engaged with all the regulators. We're talking to them, and we feel the need that certain things need to adopt, but we're not naive to believe that, it will happen immediately. Everything will take time. And the STO space is at a very, very, very early
Right.
stage, especially with
And
regulation.
that's why the benefit is there for you that you are registered in Liechtenstein. You know, one of the most supportive, from a legal standpoint, one of the most supportive countries on earth. So you have that backing. You also are in a region, you know, with your own skill sets where many of the countries you work with are all very much moving it forward. So in that respect, are you feeling confident with the position you're in, with the fact that you can go and do business now, and then really, as the US, for example, work out their own regulation and the regulatory stance, that you can really start to move into those markets when they're ready?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in Europe, it's not a problem. We're already doing issuances and we can do it now. So we're fully regulated, fully compliant. That's not a problem in Europe at all. In the US, we just have to pay lawyers. It's just the cost of, you know, it's simply a cost decision. Do you want to, you know, pay a lawyer to do an SPV and set up a Reg A or Reg S or Reg D or whatever? Yeah, it costs a lot of money and it takes patience, but you can do it. In Asia, it's a bit more difficult. So, for example, in Hong Kong, you have limitations of how many shareholders a private business can have. So, you know, you have these sort of you have these limitations in other countries. So you have other barriers, but generally we're comfortable doing business. Would we like to see it quicker and more efficient? Absolutely. The costs need to come down. The vehicles need to simplify and improve, but it's difficult because you have to amend laws and you still have to maintain investor protection, and you'll get it wrong as well. You know?
Sure. Well, what are you doing with your experience as well, Sascha? Are you involved in any way to help shape some of these changes in the legal system to really support platforms like you?
Absolutely. Yeah. We're talking to all the organizations, and we're helping to try to tell people there's a different path, and we're trying to do the right thing, to lead by example. At the same time, we have to pick our fights as well. I can't fight with every country, every regulator.
Right. And it's
I
good
have
to
too
know,
much
though.
to do with the community.
Right. And it's good to know, though, Sascha, that you do have some of that clout as well. And you know, obviously with your experience, you've done quite a lot in this space. Now, with regard to customer and client updates, you know, are there anything you wanted to say with regard to client feedback that, you know, from those who are already engaged in this, or, you know, anything at all with regard to the future for onboarding partners or clients that, again, I'm going to keep pushing for every time we do talk, because surely there's more that you're not telling us? Yeah.
I mean, one of the most exciting projects, which we've coined kind of Project X, we're working on. So I know people already know what we're doing, but we're planning to build a stock exchange. So we're building a decentralized stock exchange, not a crypto exchange, not something with digital stuff. We're building a proper stock exchange, decentralized. So these STOs can be traded and can be managed, can be dealt with peer to peer. So we've already engaged with the regulators. We already have prototypes running for the kind of order book matchmaking and process. And we're hoping by the end of the year, we'll have the first phase to launch and ready. Initially, we will have basically our existing issuances and businesses that are doing basically an STO with us. They will be able to trade on our platform. And then long term, we will have other businesses that might not do an issuance through us. So it's a digital stock exchange effectively. It's not crypto, it's not ERC20, and we're actually quite excited about it. So I think it's the first time I'm actually mentioning what we're doing here.
Sascha, that's a huge deal. Well, let's talk about this a bit more, though. That's a huge deal. Essentially, a decentralized NASDAQ. You know, it's a big deal, you know, in the sense of how that can really facilitate this platform that is own network. What does it mean for those who have supported, for example, the utility token? You know, that CHX token that really is the key fuel for your ecosystem. What could that mean for those parties? You know, perhaps potentially when will there be a correlation between the stock exchange, this decentralized one that you're building, and CHX and the own network?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, the exchange will long-term utilize CHX. It will be used for transactions and all that. We will use our blockchain to do that. So the decentralized order book, the transactions, the management between issuer and investor will go through our blockchain. And we've not built one of the fastest blockchain that is that is available right now just to do issuances and register and servicing. We always had the vision to build a secondary market. We're doing it now. and everything will use our blockchain. So CHX will be front and center and will be used as its true form of a utility in the background.
Wow, that's a huge deal. Now, with regard to compliance, you have to go back and step now. Are you confident you're going to get the approvals from different regions in the world for this kind of decentralized stock exchange?
In Liechtenstein or in Europe, we're already engaged and we're already talking. We already have basically the go-ahead from the regulator for the phase one, which is the peer-to-peer trading. And we're trying to basically get all the licenses and all that. But I'm quite confident that by the end of the year, STO tokens can be traded between two parties. And
wow, you must be excited about that. Surely.
Oh yeah, we're super thrilled, and we've been holding back simply because we wanted to make sure that everything aligns. We have some traditional stock exchange partners already on board. I'm not going to mention any names, but it will be huge. We have some banking partners that will be involved in it. It's all focused on traditional world, but with digital and blockchain. So we're not talking, again, we're not talking about a crypto exchange. We're talking about a stock exchange, digital with modern technology and a few really, really good partners.
Right. And obviously you wouldn't have been able to build this had you not had those connections that you established pre even OWN. Obviously you've really been able to challenge yourself with your team and bring to the fore all of the different stock exchange partners, all the different people that you've known perhaps in your past to make this happen. So how long has this been in the making for?
2 years now.
Wow, you have kept this under wraps. So this is a big deal really for our own network, and congratulations for getting this far. I'm looking forward to seeing more of this as well, Sascha. Now, moving to the token, some of the hard stuff we need to talk about. One of the things that recently happened is you made your switch into the native CHX token. There was a few hiccups, we won't ignore them, but now you're good to go. You're on BitMax, it's operational, and people are making that switch into that scenario. So talk us through a little bit about what happened and where you're at now with regard to your token and how people can interact.
Yeah, I mean, we swapped to mainnet, so that was I think from a technology, from a process perspective, that went really well. Mm-hmm. Obviously, our community are a little bit kind of everyone's asking for exchanges and all that, and everyone knows my stance. We're not commenting on exchanges because we're a utility token. It's a utility. So, but yeah, it'll run its course. In the true sense of the utility, we've delivered on the mainnet, we've delivered on the blockchain, and we're now focusing on the bigger pieces to drive more utilization, to drive more transactions with Project X, as I mentioned before, and really focusing on the business side. So from a tech perspective, that's a big tick for me. And now we're already focusing on the next big thing. Simply because we need to keep focused. We have a lot to do. We have a lot to develop.
Got it. Now I'm going to pull you into a bit of the crypto focus for a moment. Now, obviously, you're focused on so many things, onboarding more people, more businesses. You've got the stock exchange, decentralized platform. There's so many things you're doing. But if we consider, once again, for a moment, those people who are supporters of your utility, it's reasonable that I push this a bit more because they do want to see you continue even in that exchange trajectory. And as you said quite rightly, is that it's the responsibility of the exchanges to know when they list, when they're going to decide. But what I did want to ask you though, Sascha, is it as a CEO, is it in your thinking and is it in your planning that you are looking forward, and that you recognize whether or not that there's a need for more exchanges to be onboarded, that you're going to engage in more exchanges, just for conversations at the very least, and then they obviously go forward from there.
Absolutely. We're already talking. So, yeah.
Okay. Who are you talking to?
Well, I think people are impatient, and I can understand that as a speed. But I think equally, yes, we have maybe overstated certain things and some things haven't eventuated. We would have liked more issuances, but it's just taking a little more time because we're depending on third parties. And yes, so that was not good and it was a mistake.
Got it. So I guess the thing we want to find out from you though is that you really have a roadmap that sort of obviously respects the users, the consumers, because
absolutely
for them, they're used to more so seeing a roadmap of more exchanges essentially using your and engaging with your token.
Yeah. We're talking to a few big ones right now.
Okay, so a few big ones. So for all of you who want to know, you heard that from the CEO. That's the best I could get out of Sascha right now. That's a lot from him. Now, Sascha, staking. I want to talk about. Yeah, me too. Okay, now it's staking. I want to talk to you about that with regard to either a DPoS mechanism, making sure that people can really improve the security of the network. Are you doing anything on that front? Or even with burning, for example, is that considered? Have you ever considered anything like that? That's quite controversial, really, and a lot of people don't like that model because it removes from the utility system. Are you doing anything really to really change up the supply essentially?
No, we've not. We haven't really thought about the supply that much. We might introduce some burning in future. At the moment, we're really focused on the additional utilities that we're building, and we'll just watch and see how the volatility, how the utilization behaves. We reserve our right to do that. That's why we have a large amount of reserve tokens, simply to be able to play with it in the sense of, do we do a burn or not? I don't want to comment on that because we haven't really thought about it. We haven't made a decision on that. Right. We're very happy with the validators. We have, I think, 68 or 70 validators now. But we're going up to 100. It's a lot of community interest, and the validators are really doing a good job, because from our end, it's a decentralized environment, a decentralized network, and we're having to make sure that the validators are doing what they're supposed to do. The rewards and the penalties are working adequately, and this is playing out quite nicely. And I think towards the end of the year, we will have a true decentralized model, in the sense that we're not running the majority of validators anymore. So I'm really happy about that.
Yeah, and moving towards 100, that's substantial, given that you've got 68 now. The validators are getting rewards. Obviously, there's feedback coming from them, and they must be happy with that scenario now. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit more about dumping for a moment, because it's been a while since we talked, and quite a while since the token was first listed. Obviously, VCs were engaged initially, through this process. Are you confident now that those VCs that didn't really believe in you have dumped your token, so that you have better distribution, you have a more authentic representation of those who do value the utility?
Honestly, I don't really know, because it's been almost 2 years now from when we did the initial, token generation event. All these kind of bonuses and all that has lapsed. I think a lot of them have basically dumped in that sense, that were in there early. The token price and all that, we don't spend much time looking at it. There's a high degree of speculation, as you know, within the token price as such. We're just happy that the utility is now live and working, and we're just looking at other utility cases at the moment.
Absolutely.
So whales and larger people involved and P&D groups, we just can't concern ourselves with that. But,
and I respect that as well. But what's good to know also is that for anyone who was trying to make that quick buck initially, really, and we can talk about that in the context of the price movement itself, there's every suggestion that over time they move out of the equation, and then you just have those who want to replace them with more longitudinal belief in your utility. But recently, if we use the analogy of Everest, that's looking like the shape of your token's price change. And I know you don't like to talk about price, but right now I do need to talk about that. The price has been declining, over time, substantially since February. So do you ever concern yourself at all, though, Sascha, given that you represent the utility, like you said, and you're not one to really engage in the kind of stuff that we do see in the more contentious aspects of crypto. You certainly don't. But is it something that you are conscious of at the very least?
I'm absolutely conscious, and I respect, as I think we mentioned it the last time, I respect the people that have been with us for a long time. I also respect the people that have gotten newly into our business and our project as such. So that's definitely a concern for us. I think the issue we have is people didn't really understand where we're going, what's next, what's the future vision. And that's always fuels, kind of the price and the value and all that. And we're hoping we're able to show people now the path, what we're doing. People are also waiting for actual issuances. That is also reflected in the price and actual usage. Right. So in a way, it's actually a fair resemblance of where we are. So I always watch the I watch the price and then I see what did we do, how did we do it, and it's actually quite realistic in the sense of what are we doing and have we done more. And I think we need to do more. We need to communicate more, and we need to show people the usage.
Right,
Yeah.
and
So
it's a fine balance, and I totally respect
yeah.
what you're saying, because right now in the position you're at, you moved into past mainnet now. There's a lot that's to come, so clearly there is a trajectory that is quite positive for your future. You've alluded to some big things as well, like exchanges coming. That's all important for that narrative and for the community, and we respect that you are delivering that information, even though it is always opaque and it is always nuanced with basically not giving away too much. Now, your roadmap itself, Sascha, what's to come, with regard to any milestones, events, developments, for example? Are you enhancing any of your tech, like your wallet? What's to come that you really want to let us know for the rest of the year?
Yeah, so in August, we're releasing the game. So we have an own game, basically, which has been in development for the last 6 months. So you can basically understand what is an STO, how do you invest, and all that in a more kind of like gamified way. It's purely a mobile game, but what we're doing is we're building an actual investment platform on top of it. So you have the option to participate in the game, but you're able to see actual businesses. So you have a city, you walk around. It's almost like the old days, Sim City or whatever, and you have the option to look at actual live businesses, and you can invest through your mobile app in them. You obviously need to do KYC, AML, and all that through the game, but that's really, really exciting. And we're gamifying our investor product. So
Wow.
as an investor, you're able to play and you're able to participate. We're also building social features in so that investors can interact with each other. They can do like battles. So I can, with my STO investment portfolio, I can battle the other investor with their investor portfolio. So all that's future stuff, which doesn't exist at the moment, only through like neo brokers and all that things we're talking about. So we don't want to just focus on the status quo and replicating what's happening in the legacy world. We really want to bring it to the next level. And so we're excited about the game. We're also excited about the exchange and kind of like the on-chain order book and some of the things that we're building. So that's for the next few months.
Very cool. So you've got some cool tools. You're gamifying this to suit the millennials. They're going to love it. And also it brings out the millennial in all of us, because investment should be not just, cut and dry. It should be something that's fun if it's possible. And you're making it that way, certainly making it more engaging by adding that element. Now, with regard to essentially, alliances, I want to talk to you about that. Are there any perhaps blockchain alliances or partnerships you're forging there? Are there any updates in the mainstream sectors of business that you want to let us know more about? What do you want to push for this? Are there any corporation alliances, anything like that?
Yeah, we have a corporation alliance with an upcoming stock exchange. So that's something that'll be announced in the next few months. We also have an insurance provider that will also basically have a partnership. I think that's being announced this week, which will give protection to the investors and the issuers when they do an STO, because you need to look at kind of additional protection and these sort of things. So we're always looking around that. We have the STO Alliance, which is something which we formed in Liechtenstein. So we have trustees, lawyers, tax advisors, banks in that alliance. So companies that do an issuance with us, they shouldn't worry about tax advice. They shouldn't worry about incorporation. They shouldn't worry about who's the bank that supports them. So all of that we have, and we're building, and we're continuously adding on to. So it all serves the purpose of helping SMEs with their fundraising needs, and helping investors with frictionless and simple investments in the coolest businesses they can find.
Got it. So what about your ambassador program? I noticed that's going well. I had a look at your Twitter. I had a look at some of the other information that's out there online and on YouTube. They seem to be really representing the platform very well. Is it going well, and are you going to expand it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our ambassadors and community, they're really good. They're very, how do you say, sometimes a little bit aggressive, sometimes a little bit, quite quick and impatient, but at the same time, they're massive fans of ours. And a lot of them have been with us for almost 2 years now. So they bring our vision and mission to the world. We have a really good network around the world. They talk to businesses, they talk to peers, they go to events, and we will continue to invest in it and build onto that. It's still at an early stage, and I know the ambassadors would like to get more support, which we'll hopefully be able to fix in future. And yeah, the ambassador, the social element for us is hugely important.
Right. Well, that's good to hear. Now, obviously, there's a lot going on. You've got a lot of targets to hit. One of them is to increase the ambassadorship program and obviously supporting them more. Big business, you're really focused on building out the register that you've built right from scratch, that digital share register. SME business, we've touched on. Startup businesses, obviously, you want to expand that with regard to having more token rewards built in for those startups, allowing them to buy and sell shares, as you mentioned. So, essentially, it's looking good. That's what I want to wrap up this interview. Is there anything you wanted to say to the community, to prospective community members, perhaps, just as a real encapsulate of your vision, what you want from OWN Network, not so much from the past, but now really for the future, what most excites you as you build into the next phase of all that you have?
I think what excites us the most is working with traditional mature businesses and being able to help them. And we would like to bring them online. We want to digitize their investments, their offers, and we want investors, retail investors primarily, to have a really good, fun experience and to playfully be able to invest in these sort of businesses with the right protection, with the right regulatory controls, and with the right certainty, which you just simply don't have with IEOs and ICOs. So all of that is really our mission. And our goal has always been the full end-to-end kind of ecosystem. And with the exchange, that ecosystem will be complete.
Exactly. Well, Sascha Ragtschaa, you're the CEO of OWN Network. As always, it's been a really informative interview. I really appreciate your time, and I really do hope we can catch up again soon. If you don't know much about OWN Network, make sure that you obviously engage. The best way you can is through their social media channels. I'll put them all in the description below. Don't be afraid also to go and seek people like Sascha out. He is sometimes on Telegram, for example. His ambassadors are there, the admins. But fundamentally, as a recap, it's all about a new digital investment platform, really opening up business, investment, making the tools cool, bringing games even in to really showcase what this system can do. And most importantly, it's really showcasing that SMEs matter. You know, really allowing for that vertical, for that small business sector to have a voice where it can be set up as a share system. You know, this whole technology is really about trying to flip centralized mechanisms on their head so that we really can participate in a way we simply haven't before. And Sascha is leading that. So Sascha, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it, and hopefully we'll catch up soon.
Thanks, Brad. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.